All right, very good. All right, let's talk some football now as we get into serious topics, right? And I read the article you put out yesterday. Great stuff with speaking with Justice Ross-Simmons' mother. I guess let's start there and this whole saga and what stood out to you from your conversation with her.
I mean, the big thing is just like, Justus is just like caught up in this mess. So that is not of his making. He's hearing that he's eligible. And he heard that even before Syracuse reached out. He's wondering, like, what does this mean? Do I have a chance to come back to Syracuse? He didn't know if Syracuse wanted him. Then he goes through, Steve Angeli calls him, Syracuse is interested. He moves here. I don't know. I guess one of the questions is, like, how much stuff did he move and where's he living? But he reorganized his life to get here. He practiced for the first time on Tuesday, and then 4 days later, he's told he can't practice again. And this is a kid who, very talented from a young age, sort of wanted to be an NFL and a professional athlete from a young age. His career didn't work out the way he wanted. Obviously, he had injuries the 2 years here. Didn't get a shot in training camp that really surprised him, and had sort of moved on with his life and was doing, sort of making ends meet. He was working some trucking jobs in Rochester trying to cope with both the death of his NFL dream, and his dad passed away in May. So, a really hard time. And then he sort of gets this glimmer of hope, and then it is like, not extinguished, but you throw cold water on it like 4 days later, and it just really sucks. For the person, whatever you think about the rule, right? Whether you think fifth-year guys should be able to come back, whether you think they've played there 4 years, like, it still sucks for somebody to, think they have a chance at a dream again, and then to have it made harder.
I know the question was asked yesterday. I believe it was you who asked the question to Fran Brown about, what does Justice Ross-Simmons do now? And Fran said something along the lines of, I don't get involved in that. It's between, the athlete and his representation, and they can figure out the best course of action. And, I hope he can play, but we'll just see how it all shakes out. It was, I'm paraphrasing how he responded. Do you have a feel in speaking with his mother, how they're going to go about, trying to quote unquote appeal this?
I don't think they had it right, and this is sort of why it's so hard for athletes. Like, I don't think she had like a great sense of what was going on within the court system. I mean, it's our job, and like, it's hard for us to know what's going on and what it all means, right? So I think they're looking for guidance, and I imagine Justus is talking to people at Syracuse. I imagine he's talking to Fran. I imagine he's talking to his agents in terms of timing. Right, his option in terms of actively doing something is he could try to file or join a lawsuit in some state court, hope for a temporary restraining order that allows him to return to practice. That's not like a next day thing, but those lawsuits do seem to be, results seem to be happening in relatively short order. The other thing is that I saw a tweet from Austin Massey, who's a reporter, that the appeal of the temporary injunction that was paused, there's an appeal for that's going to take place. They're asking for it to take place over the course of early and mid-September. So, right, there's a chance that the pause on the temporary injunction that sidelined him could get lifted by that appeal, and then that would allow him to come back to the field. So it's sort of a matter of whether he wants to do something proactively and try to file his own lawsuit with his representatives, or whether he wants to just sort of let this appeal play out and see where the class action lawsuit takes him. I would think that he would try. Like, I feel like enough of these lawsuits are getting filed that he could find someone to just stick his name on it And I would think that he would try, but that's just me reading tea leaves, nothing necessarily from his family.
Yeah, similar to what J.J. Starling did, right? He attached his name to that lawsuit in California, and at the moment, anyway, he is eligible to transfer and to play somewhere else, and we'll see how that situation plays itself out. A piece of this that we haven't really talked a lot about yet, Chris, is the Syracuse side of this. So, there are these temporary injunctions that are being handed out, and guys are, okay, you're eligible for now, but it might be overturned later. From a compliance standpoint, and I realize there might be some speculation here, but do you think Syracuse is going to tread carefully with, let's say that Justice Ross-Simmons gets an injunction, he's made eligible for, the second game of the season against Cal. If you're Syracuse, how careful do you need to be about whether or not you play him? Because if he's eventually ruled ineligible, could the NCAA then go back and retroactively say, well, you play, we told you not to play him, you did, and now we're going to take that win away?
I think in the most recent statement from the NCAA, they said something along the lines of schools will not be punished for situations like you said, right? If a guy is eligible by the rules and then becomes ineligible, you're not going to get punished retroactively for playing him while he was eligible. But it certainly has the potential to just be a weird dynamic, right? If a guy, if Justice Ross-Simmons becomes like a top receiver on the team, and then he gets sidelined middle of the season, by a eligibility change, that's not great for the team. I think they'll probably tread carefully with some things, like what he's allowed to do right now with the team. He is allowed to be around them at team activities. I believe he's probably allowed to work out because former college players can go back to their college and work out with their team. They cannot practice. So whether that's walkthroughs, whether that's just formal practice, I think they'll probably be somewhat cautious with some of those terminations for the reason you said. Nobody wants to have wins taken away retroactively.
How much of a difference would he make? We talk about, you said you would love to see him play. I'd love to see him play, especially everything he's going through. He seems like a good kid. I hope he gets to play another year. But from a Syracuse football perspective, how much does it matter? How much of a difference will he make versus, if he's not on the field and they don't have him? Yeah,
it's tough to tell, but he was clearly lagging a little bit, conditioning when we watched him play. He had his hands on his hips during some of the drills. Didn't look terrible. It wasn't like a beer league football player or anything, but he's behind from a conditioning standpoint, and it's hard for me to imagine a player in that situation is able to just immediately go out and be a top receiver. Now, he does have great hands. We know that. He has a strong body. So to me, could he be sort of a situational red zone player, third down target early, especially if he sort of regains Steve's trust quickly? I could see that happening. And I could see a situation where he, over the course of the season sort of regains that conditioning and sort of returns to the level. But he is a guy that had been in the working world. He had not been anticipating coming back to college football. That wasn't on his radar. So while he says he was working out and staying in shape, there is a difference between, working out and working out under the eyes of Chad Smith and benefiting from the Syracuse football nutritional program. So I do think certainly Syracuse fans would need to be, I think, patient with thinking that he would be an impact player. And then obviously the more practices he misses, the more time he sort of sits out, the more challenging things sort of get.
How about the wide receiver position as a whole? Fran Brown was very complimentary of Umari Hatcher yesterday. What stands out to you about that group?
I am fascinated by it. I have no idea if they're going to be good or not. They have a bunch of guys that are big and tall and run fast. And from a physicality standpoint, certainly seem like they should be able to get the job done. but they are completely unproven at the Power 4 level. And that seems to me like that's a sort of a bet that Syracuse took this offseason. Daryl Gill went to Mississippi and probably a very big paycheck. Syracuse's proven Power 5 receiver sort of walked out the door. Jonte Cook, same type of situation. And Syracuse seems to have made a bet that we can replace those guys sort of cheaper and on a budget if we bring in enough of these physically talented, capable receivers. I think it's a pretty good bet. I think it's a pretty smart bet for a school like Syracuse that is trying to win on a budget. But obviously you're risking it because you don't know. You don't know what's going to show up at that position when the season comes around. Looks good, but who knows when the lights go on.
We expect to get that finalized depth chart for the first game on Monday when Fran Brown addresses the media. What are you most looking forward to seeing on that depth chart? What positional battles are you curious about?
I'm curious about sort of the wide receivers and sort of how they're listed because that group of players that looks physically capable is pretty deep. I'm looking forward to the running backs. Ahmad Miller's a guy they got from Jackson State. He ran for 1,000 yards at the FCS level. He seems like, the runner, the thunder of the running back room, although he's certainly not Yassin Willis size. Dewan Johnson, the transfer from LSU, sort of looks like the more versatile guy that sort of flourishes. The potential of Quint Allen that Jeff Nixon offense obviously knows how to utilize. And then Tyreek Hill is a guy that was very good last year, and at one point during training camp, Syracuse had honored him with one of the orange jerseys, which it gave to players that were performing well. So I think it'll be the top two guys, and I think it'll probably be something of a 50-50 split in terms of playing time. But that's a position that I am curious about. And then sort of the defensive line and what the rotation is going to be, because that's a position where they just need to get a lot better. And I think we know they have good cornerbacks. We think they're going to have pretty good linebackers. We think that Vince Karras' defense is going to be a substantial upgrade. But it's still a little unclear to me whether I have the horses on the defensive line we all know a good defense needs it.
Opener is set for a week from Saturday. We've heard Brian Blair talk about weaponizing the Dome and enhancing the game day experience. What would be top on your list, Chris, in terms of making it a better game day experience inside the Dome?
I'm going to sound like a very typical journalist here. Right? To me, this has not helped the football team at all. But to me, the food and the concessions in the Dome need to be better and like more representative of our area. And Brian talked a little bit about this, and I think it's a good way to view football. He wants people who spent time in Syracuse to be able to come up for a weekend for a football game and feel like they got everything they needed from their visit from Central New York, before they go home. So, right, whether that's your dinosaur barbecue, whether that's your trip to the apple orchard, whether that's your chicken riggies, like whatever makes Central New York to you, you should be able to get a taste of that at the football game to make the trip up worth your weekend. And I think that's a really smart way to think about the football game day experience. Other than that, I just think, to me, and maybe this is because I go every Saturday and just the script feels sort of stale. Like it just feels like they're doing the same thing that they've always done for 20 or 30 years. With the marching band, they play the same songs, and it just feels sort of stale and rote to me. And I think a fresh set of eyes on just how everything is rolled out would bring a little bit of freshness to the idea of going to a dome on a Saturday.
All right, Chris, let's bring this conversation full circle. We started with the Justice Ross-Simmons topic and talking about, trying to get that extra year. When you look at what's going on in college athletics right now, the news today about the Big Ten and the SEC likely to follow, saying that, they're going to implement a rule that if you've played in the NFL or signed an NFL contract or been part of an NFL training camp, you can't come back to school. What do you make of that? What do you make of this whole mess that the NCAA has made of the 5 for 5?
Well, I just think that this year they've messed it up so badly in terms of like making a rule like weeks after guys left school and then saying it didn't apply to them. To me, like, all the fifth-year guys should be allowed a fifth year. Those guys should have been grandfathered in. If they went to the NFL thinking that they didn't have any college eligibility left, like, to me, those guys should be able to come back. Now, that does not mean in the future, if a guy leaves after his third year to enter the NFL draft, he should be able to come back for his fourth and fifth year of college after that. Like, I do think we need a line there. You should not be able to turn pro knowingly and return back to college. But I just think that the athletes that did go to training camps and did sign NFL contracts did so without knowing that they could return to college. And to me, that is a difference. I know some folks don't like it, and if you're gone, you're gone. But to me, this year, they just made such a mess of it. Everybody gets a pass this year, and then that line does, to me, need to be drawn for the future. Yeah. And I don't think we've heard the end of this topic and probably won't anytime soon. But, Chris, as always, we appreciate the time. Great insight. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right, Chris Carlson from Syracuse.com joining us here on the show.
I like the food idea.
Yeah.
It is very hospital, high school cafeteria-like food.
Yeah. Upgrade it.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about that as well.
Chicken patty. You get that chicken patty that you could get in a penitentiary.
Having Dino in the Dome is interesting. Yeah. Having like an Apple feature in the Dome is interesting.
Yeah.
Apple turkey cheese panini or something like that. That would be.
Maybe they should plant trees up on the hill, and you can pick apples on your way into the Dome and kill two birds with one stone, Steve.
Stay right next to the orange grove. You have an apple orchard.
I heard that they are adding a rodeo, like a bull you can ride to the quad.
Is that right?
Yeah. Why not a couple apple trees? Take the family up, pick your apples. You got to bring your bag back to the car, though, unless you get a clear apple bag.
That's true. That's a good point. Got to flesh that one out a little bit more.
I'll figure